was in this case mostly a tactical vote because I voted for Monbiot in order to keep the Tory out. Well, a fat lot of good that did. But it was, and I also, like you, I thought, well, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get that electoral reform, which will mean I never have to do a tactical vote again. So I thought, this is going to be the last tactical vote I'll have to cast, and then I can vote Green or Plaid, probably Plaid Cymru for the rest of my life, and I'll be perfectly happy doing that. Well, more fool me. I feel horribly betrayed, and it's a sense not just that I feel that they are failing to exercise a sufficient brake on government, but they are allowing the Conservatives to get away with a whole lot of things which were not in the manifesto at all. Like the speed of the attack on the deficit, for example, is just way beyond what was being suggested. Like the Tory pledge that they weren't going to do a top-down assault on the NHS. Like the Tory pledge that there was going to be no restriction on frontline services. All of these, I feel, have been comprehensively flouted and broken those promises, and yet the Lib Dems, if they are saying anything, they're being mighty quiet about it because we're not hearing it. And if they are threatening to walk out because the Tories are breaking their manifesto policies, let alone the Lib Dems breaking their manifesto promises by staying in that coalition, then that threat is not being heard. And I'm with the person at the back who's saying that, yes, you know, it could well be that there are modifications of what might possibly have been even worse policies, so it's hard to envisage what those are, as a result of having the Lib Dems in government. But the cost of that, I feel, greatly outweighs any possible marginal benefits which have been received. And I think all of us, to an extent, were taken in not just by the Lib Dems, but also by the Tories, because I haven't met anyone who could have believed that they would go as far and as fast as they have gone. Yeah. And Cameron, he played a very clever game. I mean, even when he was in, he wrong-footed us over a couple of issues. For instance, he apologised for Bloody Sunday in a very open way, and you think, blimey, you know, Blair would never have done that. Brown probably wouldn't have done that either. You know, they couldn't bring themselves to do it. And of course, but then afterwards you think, well, actually it cost him absolutely nothing to do that. Mm-hmm. But he made people think that he wasn't at all like Thatcher. And you know, the mistake that Thatcher made was that if you do want to demolish the state and destroy society, you shouldn't come across as a barking, swivel-eyed ideologue. You should come across as someone who's very smooth and very friendly and very nice and says the right kind of things and doesn't wage war on society. He doesn't sort of, you know, if you want to be very fiscally conservative, the best way to do it is to be socially liberal. And that's what Cameron and his team have learnt from the mistakes that Thatcher and her team made. You know, she was surrounded by people who, well, there were two kinds of men in her cabinet. There were those who had spent their entire lives shoving other boys' heads down the toilet throughout their childhood, and there were those who had spent their whole childhood having their heads shoved down the toilet. Of the two, I don't know which were the more dangerous, but they sort of carried their weird afflictions with them, whereas this lot, they seem a lot more normal. But you know, it's a sort of studied normality, I think, and it's very, very dangerous. And what's happening is, in my mind, a classic application of what Naomi Klein calls the shock doctrine, where they are making use of an opportunity. They've taken the opportunity provided by a crisis to do things which would never be acceptable politically in any other circumstances. And what makes it even worse is that there isn't really a crisis. You know, it comes back to this thing that the debt and the deficit aren't actually that big, but they're constantly telling us there is a crisis, and they're turning a fake crisis into a real one, and they're getting away with what the Conservatives have always wanted to do, which is a comprehensive dismantling of the supportive state. And the reason why they do this, the reason why people on the right hate big government, is that big government is the means by which money is transferred from the rich to the poor. It's a means by which the rich are taxed and social benefits, welfare, health, education, all the rest of it, are provided for the poorer people in society. And the Conservatives have always been looking for ways to wage war with that agenda. And they can't come out and say this is what we want to do because they would never get elected. So the ideal thing is to take a crisis and say, there's a crisis situation, we've got to act, there's no alternative but to do this. And that's the agenda they're rolling out now. And I personally am disgusted by the Liberal Democrats at facilitating that agenda which will take generations to recover from in this country.
Here.
I see a few hands raised. I think you had your hand up before, lady here, and then we'll go to the man right at the back. And then there's a lady here who hasn't spoken, a man who hasn't spoken there. I'll leave you guys till later, and a man there who hasn't spoken. Anyone?